Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Podiatry Business Podcast with myself, Lorcan O'Donnell, podiatrist and podiatry business mentor. So today's podcast is episode 185 and it is titled What's the Right Profit Margin for Your Podiatry Clinic? Now, a recent UK report that was brought out by an agency on different clinics. It was primarily physio clinics, but very applicable to podiatry, I find, having read the report. Shows that higher profit margins percentage are occurring in smaller solo clinics than are occurring in much bigger clinics in say £1 million. Yet those larger clinics are actually generating far more profit as a cash amount. Useful data, but I found the report very useful, but I thought that it missed a lot of points, and I thought it would be good to just kind of go over some of the points that were in it and to go back over and explain where I felt it missed big parts. So, for example, I don't feel that clinic owners, my experience speaking with lots of podiatry clinic owners is that I don't feel it's the right thing to build a clinic to win or to reach a benchmark. You're better off designing your life first and then building that business model that delivers you. So I suppose my core message I want to put across in this podcast is that margin as a percentage shouldn't be your goal. Even cash as a percentage or as a number shouldn't really be the only goal. That instead it should be, what is your life? You add freedom to that, and sustainability should really be. That while smaller clinics can look safer on paper, they can carry hidden risks. For example, they're very dependent on the owner. The owner can burn out, and they have a fragile capacity. And the hardest part is, I think it's got it right here, is the messy middle. Messy middle where you go from a small clinic to a much larger clinic, and as you transition through it. And I see that with clinics that come to me that are often in the messy middle, that what they're doing is the clinic owner is trying to treat patients while managing and growing a team and building a business to gain freedom. And it ends up being overwhelming, and it's very, very stressful for a lot of these clinic owners until we help them. So if you're a solo clinic owner and you're doing 35-40% profit margin, you might feel like you're winning. But if you get ill for a week, or you need to take a holiday for 2 weeks, or you have a dip in your diary, it's not going to be great. If you're a clinic that's in the middle and you're scaling but your margin drops, you might feel that you're failing, but actually what you're really doing is you're building a platform for real sustainable long-term freedom. Now, what the report doesn't really fully capture is the best clinic for you isn't necessarily the biggest clinic or the one with the highest profit margin or even the highest profit. You might be surprised to hear me say that, because the highest profit might bring you the lifestyle you don't want. The best clinic is the one that matches your life, not mine, not anyone else's, the life that you want to have. Okay, so what does the report get right and what does it miss? Well, the report does get right that solo clinics, small clinics where the owner is the primary driver of the business, they might have maybe one associate or a part-time, someone like that, they often have a higher percentage margin, as they might be, say, 35% profit margin, and that the bigger clinics have a lower profit margin, anywhere from 12 to 17 to 18% is what they say in the report. Now, it can be higher if you do it right, but they have an actual higher profit cash, and that the messy middle is real. It is true that as clinics scale from that smaller one to the larger one, you often find that those are the clinic owners that are the most unhappy, and it's usually because they're just not doing it right. And I've been in all three of those positions, and I've done all of this. Now, what it misses is that benchmarking, as in comparing your business to others, can create the wrong type of comparison game. It's the wrong place for you to go. What it also seems to suggest is that many clinic owners want to have a much larger clinic. It's talk about £1 million and above. That's not really what they want. That's not what I find that clinic owners want, and it's not necessarily the best thing for them. And sometimes clinic owners will come to me and think that's what they want, and when we actually go through, we find that's not actually what they want and what they need. What people typically want is they want control of their life. They want not to feel tied to their business all of the time. They don't want to feel, they want to have income stability so that they're not waking up on a Sunday night rather, in the middle of the night, wondering how am I going to sort out the wages tomorrow. As I've been in that position, and they want to have freedom of time to pick and choose what they want. What it also misses is that true profit is not just accounting profit. It also should take into account what you're paying yourself, the owner's salary, the stress cost that goes with it, and the dependency risk that the business has. How much does it depend on you to run the business? So let's talk about what you should really be doing and what we should be looking at when you're doing your business if you're reading this report. So the first thing is you should really define what your life should look like. Put your lifestyle first, okay? So we want to define what a life outcome looks like for you. So what clinical hours do you want to actually work? Or how many hours do you want to do in clinical versus non-clinical? There's no right answer for this. Some people love working clinical. They want to work 4 days a week. They want to do 5 days a week. Some want to do 0. We want to find out what is your income target. How much money do you want to make? And it isn't just about your wage, but also what you're putting into your pension, etc., etc., etc. What's the stress tolerance that you were happy to take? So what I mean by that is, what poison are you willing to swallow? If you have a business that's doing £1 million and making you 300,000 a year, you're going to have some level of stress and pressure or poison that you'll have to swallow to get to that. Likewise, if you have a business that's doing 100,000 a year and you're making 50,000 profit or 70,000 profit, whatever it happens to be, likewise, you're going to have some poison, some stress. They're going to be slightly different, and you have to figure out, well, what am I actually willing to take? So I have sat down and thought this, and my number one is I will not work with any assholes. If I have anyone that's causing me constant stress or aggro, either a patient or a client, I will just remove them from my life. I'm not interested in that. And I'm not willing to put any amount of money to do so. What kind of holiday or time off do you have? What expectations do you have for that? Do you want to work a 3-day week and have a 4-day weekend? Do you want to manage people? If you do, how many? What type of people? That kind of stuff. So you define your life first. Then the step 2 is you pick the business model that matches it. So that might be a solo clinic. It might be a small team. Now, having a solo clinic or a small team makes it harder for you to sell that business in time, but that's the poison you're going to swallow. Maybe you're going to have a small team of employed clinicians rather than associates. Maybe you're going to have a larger clinic and you're going to have the CEO model type business. It's kind of what I do in my clinic. Or maybe you're going to have a single site or a multi-site clinic. So you got to pick the model that will fit your lifestyle. And if you haven't picked the model correctly to fit your lifestyle, then you're going to have a pretty miserable business and pretty miserable lifestyle. And mistake I see is clinic owners come to me and say, I need some help. I don't feel happy. I'm not content with where my business is. I feel overwhelmed. And they haven't actually thought about, well, what does good lifestyle look like? So it takes them a while to figure that out, and therefore it takes a while for them to settle on the model that is best for them. And you can have any model that you like. Don't feel that you have to have a big clinic or multiple clinics because you saw other people do it, or because guys like me tell you you can. You do what works best for your life. Once you've done that, step 3 on this process is that we then help you to build systems to protect that outcome, to protect and make sure that that model actually will occur. And it's simpler than you think, okay? So it could be that you're putting in numbers dashboard. Well, not that you could be, you have to, no matter whatever level, but you're putting in numbers dashboard. You're maybe putting in a marketing engine, that you're systemizing the business so that you have delivery is being systemized with or without you. Maybe you're looking at team structure and accountability and how do you deal and what are the skill sets you have for that. Because essentially, if you're listening to this at the moment, you have a life and a business that's not really where you want it to be, and you have an idea of where you'd like it to be. And to get you from where you are to where you want to be, you have to implement projects skill sets, etc. And what you're missing is a skill set to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And that's what we help our clients with. Okay, so then let's talk about the messy middle. So the messy middle is where you have you don't have a big, massive clinic where you're not really treating patients, you're not the CEO, and you don't have a tiny little clinic maybe with just you and maybe one or two others. Instead, what you have is you're trying to scale up this business, and it's typically clinics that are somewhere going north of 15,000, 20,000 pounds a month, trying to get to 60, 70, 80,000 to 100,000 a month, depends on the clinic. And at this point, what you're doing is you as the clinic owner are wearing two hats. You're basically a clinician delivering care, but you're also the manager and the leader in the business. And commonly what we see is that the clinic diary is full, but your bank balance is not improving. The owner is exhausted. They feel tied to the business, and they feel that they're making less out of this than anybody else in the team. Maybe they're actually paying themselves less than some of the team members, and team members often don't know this. Or they have a team that's just not underperforming, and they feel they don't know how to get them to be as mindful or as bought into the project as they are themselves. And in many cases, they're burnt out, and they're wondering, why do they even do this? Those clinics will often have inconsistent marketing, what I call helicopter marketing, where they turn it on and turn it off, turn it on and turn it off, and have inconsistent leads and inconsistent revenue as a result of that. They're not clear on their numbers, and they're therefore not clear on what decisions they want to do. Now, this is a clinic owner who can make the biggest changes to their business in the shortest period of time, because they typically have the volume, they have a lot of the building blocks in place. They're just all in the wrong place, and this is the kind of business that needs to evolve their model. And it's not that you're bad at business, it's just you don't know, you don't have the skill set, and you need help to get you from where you are to where you want to be. So there are mistakes that I see clinic owners make at each of these three stages: the small clinic, the messy middle, and the large clinic. So multiple mistakes, but I'm going to talk about two in each case. So with the small clinic, they think that staying smaller is safer. And I get it, and that's perfectly okay. But there is a risk with the business being concentrated on the owner. Break your arm, get sick, go on holidays, and the revenue is instantly hit. That is a problem with being a smaller clinic. The second is unfortunately that these clinic owners typically are not being professional business people. They're treating it more like a job with a logo. So they'll be quite concerned about the aesthetics of how things look, but don't really have any idea or plan of what they're trying to achieve. They don't really have targets. They don't really have scorecards. They've no marketing plan, and they've no real pricing strategy. And they worry about putting their prices up, whereas bigger businesses have a plan. They know why they're doing it, and so on. So they're not being professional business people, and I don't mean in any disparaging way. I have been that person, and it was not enjoyable. And what I decided to do was to build my business, to build it bigger, thinking that was what was necessary. And I got myself into the second stage, which is the messy middle. So two mistakes I see is that they continue to use, in the messy middle, associates for too long, because they feel that it gives them flexibility, and what it does is it gives them, I suppose, reassurance that if there's no work coming in, I'm not going to have to pay the wages. But what it can do is it really caps control, and it caps, because you're not in control of the staff because they're self-employed, and they know that. And it caps consistency, and the owner almost feels more trapped in the business because they have to make sure that the turnover is coming in, because they don't know for sure if the staff member will be in next month or not. That commonly will happen. It's much harder when you have an associate in the messy middle to build that culture, to build those standards, to have systems and get that associate to make sure that they use the systems. And you end up with a less predictable business and less predictable revenue. The second critical mistake I see in the messy middle, is that because the clinic owner is so busy treating patients and juggling all these balls all over the moment, they really don't know their numbers. They don't really check their numbers. So they don't know, for example, what their utilization rate is, or their capacity, or how productive are the clinicians. They don't really know how many leads they get, where they get them from, and what's their conversion rate. They don't know their break-even point, their profit per hour, etc., etc. And if they don't know their numbers, they're not able to make the diagnosis of what needs to change in their business. And as a result, the business will plateau. It'll get bigger, it'll plateau, and the clinic owner will find that they're actually not really making that much more money than they would have been if they were just working on their own. But in both cases, they're tied to the business. So what did they do? So then we have the third stage, which is the large clinic. And when we talk about a large clinic, we're talking about the clinic. In this report, they're talking about $1 million. So we're talking about really over 70,000 a month and beyond. $1 million is £83,000 a month. And in those cases, what we see is that a lot, and this is the case in this report, is that this report show that most of these large clinics have multiple sites, and they think that having multiple sites will allow you to hit your goal. And this is common in podiatry, where you see a clinic owner having 3 small clinics. They're working 3 days in one, 2 days in the other, 3 in the other, and that's not the way to do it, okay? Because you can scale your revenue with one larger clinic, because you have better utilization, better pricing, better systemization, because it's not just about more locations. More locations gives you more complexity and actually makes things harder and for you. And I lived that position. I had 2 clinics at one point, and I was going over and back between the 2 clinics. They were in the one city, and because of circumstances, I ended up closing one and moving the other into a much larger location. So we have 6 clinical rooms and a gym. And actually, that one clinic makes more money than it used to when I had 2 clinics. And it hits my goal. I haven't really needed to try and build that business for the last few years, because it hits my financial goals of what I want. So having multiple sites is not necessarily the right thing for you as a business owner. Again, it depends on your life plan. But it's a mistake I see large clinics making. And then not getting serious about marketing. Marketing is the lifeblood of your business. And what happens in all of these cases, and I see it with large clinic owners, is they basically, when you ask them what they're marketing they're saying they're doing word of mouth, which basically they're relying on reputation referrals from others. Their overheads are rising, but they're not actually have a system in place to ensure they have a reliable acquisition system of getting patients in the door. And you must have that when you have especially when you have a bigger clinic. So some practical takeaways I'd like to give you is, if you're a small clinic, no matter what size clinic, but in particular if you're a small clinic, you're starting there, define what your life target is and build a plan that will de-risk you as the owner. That would be a really good thing to do in a small clinic, so that if you do break your arm, if you do want to take that month off and go traveling to India, that the business is okay. Start taking weekly numbers. Have a ritual where you sit down and you look at the numbers in your business. Just if you're using something like Clinical gives you lots of KPIs to get started with. I do this every single week. I go in Monday morning, 8 o'clock, and I look at the numbers inside my business and I make decisions based off that. And by 9 o'clock, I have that done. If you're in the messy middle, start to decide your staffing model intentionally. Is associate actually the smartest thing to do? Maybe I'm better off unemployed. Maybe I need to have more employed and less associate. I wouldn't be against associate completely, but in many circumstances, it's probably not the smartest thing for you to build a sustainable business. Build a simple dashboard. So the things I would tell you to look at is, how many leads do I get? How many what's my booking from the leads? What's my conversion rate? How many are actually turning up? How many are continuing to turn up? How many am I retaining? What's my revenue? What am I turning over every single week? Not every year, not 6 months ago. What am I turning over last week? And what's my profit margin? Simple dashboards like that. What's my profit margin? What does my break even need to be every single day, every single week, even every single hour? You can start to figure that out. If you're larger, what you really should be doing is starting to audit whether you're scaling via complexity, which is not a good idea, or via efficiency. So complexity is maybe the more clinics I have. I see clinic owners in podiatry in the UK, and they have multiple clinics, all small clinics, 1-2 rooms. They would be far better, far more efficient, and I suspect make more money if they had a smaller number of locations that were slightly larger. And start treating your marketing like an operation system that is sits there, works on its own, and is not just something that you occasionally look at. As I mentioned to you earlier, I have a marketing agency called Podiatry Patients on Tap, and we do podiatry marketing for clinic owners. Now, the reason I mention this is because I think that's what it should be in your business. You should have a sustained tap of marketing that gives you leads that you can turn up as you need to, and that you know with confidence will give you more leads that will turn into more patients as you scale that business. It should not be something that you occasionally turn to and say, oh my God, I need some patients now. We do not want to have helicopter marketing, because marketing and a flow of new patients that you can reliably measure the effect of the efforts you put in there will be the lifeblood of your business as it scales. And it is the difference being able to scale without stress and efficiency versus complexity. So before I finish, what I would say to you is stop comparing your clinic to everyone else's clinic and everyone else's stage. Instead, decide what kind of clinic do you want to have that will give you the life that you want to have. Then build that clinic around it that funds that life, supports that life, that gives you that level of freedom that you want. Think about what poison are you willing to swallow. And you don't have to put up with stuff that you're currently putting up with. And if you want help with that, well then we here at More Practice Profits will be delighted to help you. So you can go to morepracticeprofits.com. You can get a completely free copy of my book, Podiatry Business Success Secrets, to download. Or if you want to buy a copy, you just go onto Amazon and you can buy a copy on Amazon. It'll be at your door next day. Packed full of everything I've done to get my business from a small clinic to that larger clinic that gives me, that one-site clinic gives me the lifestyle I want and allows you to do the similar. Alternatively, if you want to have a chat with us about working with us and helping you solve your business, just go to morepracticeprofits.com and book a 10-minute triage call where we'll have a quick phone call and we'll see if we think we can help you, and we talk about next steps. So until next time, don't put up with your business where it is. If you're not happy with it, start to think about changes and build it into something that provides you with the lifestyle that you really want and you deserve.